What's up, guys? Welcome back to Newswave. So the other day, Nintendo fired back at a report around the Switch 2, and it's from a familiar source, so we'll go over that and exactly why Nintendo decided to respond to this one in particular here today. Also, we are going to be talking about just the week ahead, because there is so much stuff that'll be happening, of course, with not only the Switch 2 launch, but also just a bunch of events, some even now being rumored to where we could have others to look forward to, and then even some big time reveals that have already been hinted towards. All that and more, guys. If you enjoy these videos, make sure you hit that like button, helps out a ton. And if you're new here to the Spawn Wave channel, make sure you subscribe down below. And of course, members for the channel do get Newswave early. If you would like to learn more about that, click the join button or the link in the description down below. And we're going to start today with one of those free upgrades for the Switch 2 from a Switch 1 game. Specifically, a pair of titles that didn't go over the best when it came to its performance, and its bugs, and its glitches, and that, of course, being Pokemon Scarlet and Violet, as we do have some direct footage that was released on that Nintendo Today application, and you can see this. It's posted up. This is over from Sarah B, who shares the about 30-second clip, and guys, this is Pokemon Scarlet and Violet running at 60 FPS. Like, remember before, I was saying, hey, look, if we can get a solid 1080p 30 FPS, you know, I'll call it a win. This is better than I was kind of expecting. I mean, even an uncapped frame rate, which we could still be looking at. They could find some parts of the game that maybe aren't necessarily hitting 60, but the fact that it was looking pretty smooth here, I will say, these are clips that do jump around quite a bit. I mean, it's a couple seconds here, a couple seconds there, and I was trying to look off in the distance as one of the other things they mentioned was sort of draw distance in general of not only Pokemon, but even just landmarks in general, trees, for example, or grass, that is apparently expanded a bit more. So again, quick clips and cuts here and there, but this is very promising for a game, or two games really, Scarlet and Violet, that certainly needed the Switch 2, which is unfortunate because, you know, I thought about this, if this was going to be their next generation release, and we were just getting it, say, later this year, even like to start next year, and Scarlet and Violet never went through that whole thing with the Switch 1 performance, probably would have been received a lot better and looked at more fondly than it is now. But I guess it kind of gets a second chance here, and I'll definitely be checking that one out as one of the big titles to at least take a look at with backwards compatibility in mind. Also, we do have an event coming up here for Epic when it comes to Unreal Engine, and in fact, it looks like one of the most anticipated titles using Unreal Engine 5 will be in attendance. We can see this posted up. This is from the Witcher account saying, we'll be coming together with Unreal Engine to present during the State of Unreal. We're looking forward to showcasing some of the innovative technology and features that will power The Witcher 4 and beyond. That is today, 9:30 a.m. Eastern Time. So, I mean, this will be interesting just because, one, obviously, if you're a Witcher fan, you're going to want to tune in because you're just going to get more information about The Witcher 4, but also it'll show more about some of the stuff they'll be using with Unreal Engine in mind for The Witcher 4. As we know, they moved over to that for this new Witcher game, and it'll be kind of interesting just to see what they can do, of course, from a visual standpoint, but also, I figure, just different ways to build out the world itself, and sure, there'll be plenty of talk, I'm sure, about ray tracing and lighting and that kind of stuff, but just in general, making the world feel more and more lived in. How exactly can they accomplish that with some of these newer tricks from Unreal Engine? Oh, and we did have the full Madden 26 cover that was revealed, which, I mean, you can see here, it is indeed Saquon Barkley with one of the most iconic moments in a regular season in years now, where he did the spin and like the backwards hurdle over a player, which, hey, fortunate for all the Jaguars fans out there, they decided to just make it a solid black helmet on the player that was getting embarrassed on the field, which, yeah, I mean, the Jaguars franchise probably had enough of that. So, at least, hey, there you go. But it is, I think, a really, really good cover for Madden in general. I like the ones where it's more of a dynamic shot, say, of a player actually playing football rather than maybe just like running towards the camera a little bit, or something like this is really, really cool. And of course, if you're an Eagles fan, you might even just pick it up just for the memorabilia side of things. But there you go, full cover being shown. It is coming out August 14th. Hey guys, with some of the quick news out of the way, let's get into the bigger stuff. Let's start right away with Nintendo firing back at Bloomberg after a report was posted about the Switch 2 when it comes to retail and wholesale, with pricing specific to some of these retailers. Now, we can see this is an article that was posted by Takashi Machizuki, who has been in hot water before with Nintendo after they replied previously when it came to some of the discussion around like Switch revision stuff and 4K at that time, and it was a whole thing there. So this isn't necessarily new for Takashi and Bloomberg, but still, we can see the title where it says Nintendo has a shrewd plan for selling the Switch 2 in Japan, saying, quote, store operators will be able to make a gross margin of about 5% on each Switch 2 sold, higher than the informal industry standard of roughly 2%, according to people familiar with the plan. The decision will help bolster domestic retailers and ensure the new console is given prominent placement at outlets across the country, the people said, asking not to be named as the information is private. So I will say 5% that's actually quite a bit, okay? I know it sounds crazy because you're like, really, that's it, 5%? Look, 2% is... So what would happen is when we would order new systems, any of them, Xbox, a PlayStation, like a Wii or a Wii U at the time, you'd end up having to pay shipping on that from your wholesaler, and you would end up, believe it or not, you'd have to spend money to get these things in there. You would lose money on the sale for a new system. The reason you keep them in stock, of course, is because it would create traffic, and then you can upsell somebody with controllers, games, you name it, right? So in this case, 5%, that's pretty solid. At least that's what was being pitched here by Takashi Mochizuki of Bloomberg. And 4 hours later, Nintendo issued this statement saying a news report related to the wholesale price of Nintendo Switch 2 in the Japanese market was published. We want to clarify that this report is not true. Nintendo does not disclose any information regarding business conditions with distribution and retail partners. Now, you might be wondering why Nintendo felt the need to issue a response to Bloomberg here, because I'll admit, the story I saw, I was like, that's interesting, I guess. Hey, look, they get a couple more percent off the top for the retailer. Great. Yeah, that means they'll probably put the product, that being the Switch 2, either closer to the front or in a more prominent area, or just take up more floor space for the thing, making them more money than any of these other products or systems, sure. And I'm like, okay, there you go. Well, from Nintendo's perspective, there's a couple things here. One, it sounds like Nintendo is sharing information when it comes to how much they're selling to wholesalers or what the margins are. They're almost like, okay, Nintendo is just throwing this information around when it is supposed to be confidential between retailers and wholesalers, that kind of stuff. But then the other angle is the way I think Takashi got this information is he probably talked to one or two or three, a couple of retailers or a couple of wholesalers, but not all the wholesalers and not all the retailers, okay? So the other thing with this is I noticed in my time doing this, some wholesalers would just charge different money, like amounts of money, for different products based on region. So I found out very quickly that several states over, some of the people I would talk to at different stores had way different pricing at times than I did for some of my more high margin stuff, and some of their other stuff was more high margin than some of the stuff I had that I was almost losing money on. So it's very difficult, I think, to take from a couple of different places and then extrapolate it across, in this case, all of Japan. Because then you're going to have retailers that are like, hold on, I'm getting like 2%. Who's getting 5% here, Nintendo? So, yeah, they basically have to come out and deny that report immediately. And I will say this, they can deny it even if it's 4%. Well, that's not 5% like you reported, so the whole thing is wrong. That's kind of the game here. You don't specify what's wrong and how you would correct it. You just say it's wrong. Now, the other aspect, of course, because it's Bloomberg, it is talking to the business-centric side of things, investors, etc. So they probably want to deny it because it sounds like they are giving up some money they don't have to, like in general for the system. It's like, why? Just do 2%. It's always worked. Why are you giving up that extra 3%, right? So again, there's a lot of things at play here, but Nintendo, pretty straightforward, said that's incorrect. It's actually 4.5%. No, but that you kind of get the idea there and why they would want to dispute this. And man, they just don't like Takashi Mochizuki, do they? This is not the first time they've had to push back on it. Almost feels like they maybe have a dartboard in their office with his face on it at this point. Next up, let's talk about Sony, a potential state of play, and then sort of the schedule going forward at this time for this week, which should have a ton of different announcements. Should be a lot of fun. But first, let's start here. On Reddit, it seemed to be picked up that Shinobi was hinting towards a state of play from Sony that could be announced today, actually. And I was looking at this, okay, let's take a look. And this is where I was led to, which you can see over on Reset Era, where a person was quoting them and saying, it's my birthday tomorrow, so that's obviously when they'll announce state of play. And then Shinobi just said, happy birthday. That was enough to, of course, throw everyone into this spiral of like state of play, reset the clock, it's time. And look, I mean, it is kind of time for Sony to do something that would be a bit more substantial for some announcements coming up, right? And I know they have the Summer Game Fest coming up. We would have usually expected them to do something at the end of May, but we have already heard that they would be doing something in June at some point, and you know what? This week is already busy. Yeah, sure, whatever. Go ahead and announce a state of play for this week just to pack even more in, because if you go over to Insider Gaming, which I'll have this link down below, many sites are sort of creating this schedule so you can follow along a bit easier. We can see that there is actually a lot happening, because people, of course, are thinking of, okay, Switch 2 launch, then we have Summer Game Fest, then we have the Xbox showcase over the weekend. But like as of today, for example, State of Unreal. You know, that's happening here in a few hours after this video goes up. Then, of course, Summer Game Fest, Day of the Devs. We have that I.O. showcase. There's Wholesale Direct. There's the Future Game Show. Could be kind of an interesting show there that could have a lot of stuff. The PC Gaming Show. There's going to be a Death Stranding 2 on the Beach game premiere. So, and then at the Xbox Showcase, of course, the Outer Worlds 2 Direct. Again, a lot of this stuff will be updated as we go along, because I do kind of feel like we'll see some sort of event from Capcom, whether that's new announcements or them just sort of going over some of the stuff they've already announced. Maybe some things even at, say, Summer Game Fest want more of a look. Tune in at Capcom's event, or Ubisoft with their Forward event that kind of makes sense just based on the amount of stuff that they've been teasing and the fact that they're not at Summer Game Fest from what I've seen so far. It would make sense that maybe they want to hold their own event and sort of relay this information themselves. But yeah, hey, Sony State of Play, why not throw it on the pile? We'll keep an eye out today to see if they have anything to announce. Next up, let's talk about a game we can now look forward to seeing more about. That's from IO Interactive. It's their 007 project that they had announced, it feels like forever ago now, but also then kind of reconfirmed again at the big Switch 2 Nintendo Direct, where they said that, yes, it would also be on the Switch 2, but I've been curious about how exactly they were going to go about this and what we would see from it, but we can see this. It's posted up. This is from Summer Game Fest saying IO Interactive has announced its James Bond game is titled First Light, and it is set to be revealed this week. Okay, so if we take a look, this is over on their website that they've now posted, saying 007 First Light is a brand new James Bond video game developed and published by IO Interactive, featuring a wholly original Bond origin story. Players will step into the shoes of the world's favorite secret agent to earn their 00 status. Absolutely love the idea, by the way, of getting this origin story for 007. We do know that IO Showcase is coming up on June 6th, that being 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern Time. So seems like we'll find out, I'm sure, quite a bit there. Of course, that's following Summer Game Fest, so it's kind of like back to back, right? All kinds of information flying around there. So this should be a lot of fun. But looking at this First Light game, I'm trying to think of how exactly they're going to go about it, because we know how they've kind of tackled Hitman, which is pretty cool. I mean, again, third-person adventure, almost puzzle game, sure. But I almost feel like with 007, you can still do that third-person style, but it be more of like a narrative adventure with some action sprinkled in there, especially if it is more of like the origin story for 007, which again, I think is a really, really cool premise and story for them to set up here. And the fact that, of course, they're working directly with the companies behind 007 and everything. This, I think, could be a lot of fun. And certainly they've been working on it for quite some time, and it seems like they are really, really taking this seriously to make sure they get everything right with kind of the character and the backstory. So I'm looking forward to seeing more about this later on this week, and I guess we'll find out what they have for us on June 6th, not only with Summer Game Fest, of course, there, but also their own IO Showcase. And in our last bit of news, let's talk about Tango Gameworks, as they have announced that they are officially back with a new website, logo, the whole thing. Of course, they were bought by Krafton from Microsoft, and along with Tango Gameworks, Hi-Fi Rush was being moved over under their new ownership, which we can see the website here. It says Tango Gameworks is back with a new look and a new website. Finally, after months of waiting, Tango Gameworks is back in a brand new way. We've opened our site to give our fans and future team members a look into our studio. Here you can learn about the studio philosophy as well as see featurettes from the members of the team. They have their new logo here, which they say is focused on what it feels like to make a game. Our vision is centered on a studio that acts like a creative workshop, making games and experiences that emphasize that handmade feel we put into our work. Now, they say they are hiring right now, so there's a bunch of positions that are open, and they're going to look to give us more updates as they go along with a game that they're developing that we can only assume is a follow-up to Hi-Fi Rush, which, I mean, it was kind of strange when it came out. It was cool because it was a shadow drop, but we really didn't know what we were getting into when they first showed it. It's like, okay, this looks kind of cool, very unique, and then we get a chance to play it, go through it, and we're like, wow, that was a really, really good and innovative and interesting, very different kind of game. And then we find out that, I guess it wasn't working out for Microsoft with the location tag Gameworks. They moved to shut them down. And then Krafton comes in and picks the whole thing up. So I'm curious where they can go from here after what they learned with Hi-Fi Rush. Seems like it'll probably be a little while before we hear about what I assume is just going to be Hi-Fi Rush 2. But it is really cool that they have a chance now to really try to tackle that as like that being their big focus this time. I don't really expect them to go off and do much else, at least yet. Focus on what really got people interested at this point in something different from Tango Gameworks and come up with a sequel to Hi-Fi Rush. So I guess we'll keep an eye on them. But at least for now, they have a new website, new logo, scaling up. So we'll see what the future holds for Tango Gameworks. And before we go to the comments of the day, we'll take a look at the poll that I posted up yesterday, where I ask, of these major third-party companies, which are you most hoping to see a big announcement from this week? Wow, Capcom leading the way there with 39%, then Square Enix at 32%, then Sega or Atlas really at 23%, and then Ubisoft all the way down at 6%, which actually, again, I think Ubisoft has some really cool stuff there, although most of it would be remakes technically, but hey, they're older titles that people like and they can hopefully not mess them up. But Capcom, sure, we're kind of expecting at this time their new Resident Evil game, Resident Evil 9, to be in attendance at Summer Game Fest, or who knows, maybe a Sony State of Play at this rate. And from what people are saying, it's third person. So, I mean, that might be good for people who are annoyed at the first person perspective, at least that they've had here with the previous two Resident Evil games. I didn't really mind it as much, but they even went back into the third person mode for Resident Evil Village. So clearly people were asking for it. And there are a few other things that have kind of leaked out there about Resident Evil 9. I'll kind of leave it up to that though, because I think it sounds like it could be a really cool reveal for people who haven't seen any of those leaks if they end up being correct, say, at Summer Game Fest. If it, we'll say, certain characters kind of pop up and you're off and running with the logo. But here's hoping Capcom, Square, Sega, and yes, even Ubisoft can have some really cool, really big announcements as we go through this week. And we'll finish up with the comment of the day as you're seeing here. This is from JFK TV, who says, if Snake can get a triumphant return to make the stealth genre pop again, I'd welcome Mr. Sam Fisher back with open arms. I miss stealth games so much. You know, it does feel like stealth games in general aren't really like their own games. They're kind of just modes or just stealth elements to bigger titles now. I know with the PS2, Xbox, GameCube, there were definitely way more stealth games, I feel like. Definitely more high-profile ones, as you mentioned, Splinter Cell and Metal Gear Solid. I think it'd be cool to see a return for Splinter Cell where it was focused on stealth specifically, because even that franchise kind of got away from it and went like full-on action for the most part. But hey, with Metal Gear Solid Delta coming up here, that being obviously big focus on stealth, and a Splinter Cell remake coming up apparently that should also be a return to the more stealth-oriented gameplay. I'd like to see that as well. So, hey, we'll see as we go along with this week if maybe Ubisoft really does have something to show for Splinter Cell. And ladies and gentlemen, that's going to do it here for Newswave. If you enjoyed this video, guys, hit that like button. If not, hit the dislike. Leave comments down below about everything we talked about here today. If you missed yesterday's Newswave, I'll leave it up here in a card. Or maybe you wanted to take a trip back to 2006 with the Wii Shop channel. Well, you can actually do that now as I checked it out in a video. I'll leave that right below it. Thanks guys for watching, and I'll see you next time.